DOLA Custom Prescription Education. Shell width. Behind the design. Digital corrections. This section of the presentation will explore shell width options, including the prescription of medial flares and medial tapers. Behind the design. Orthotic shell width. This section of the presentation will cover orthotic shell width options, including narrow, standard, wide, practitioner defined, tapers, and flares. Shell width is commonly prescribed to provide a combination of control, orthotic surface area, and footwear fit. Behind the design. Narrow shell width. This client needed a custom orthotic to fit a hard-to-fit footwear style. The shoe was very narrow, however the patient didn't have any significant forefoot morphology, including bunions. The aim of this orthotic was to fit the specific footwear. This was achieved with a variety of prescription variables. They used the DOLA Custom orthotic service. They selected the narrow option from the shell width options in the digital corrections section of the DOLA detailed prescription form. Key features of this selection include the width of the shell at a position just proximal to the metatarsal heads. The medial border of the orthotic is modified with respect to the first metatarsal. A narrow shell width spans from the lateral border of the foot to the lateral sesamoid. Orthotip. Factors to consider when selecting a narrow shell width include casting or scanning position, the different forefoot widths captured in a non-weight bearing versus a semi-weight bearing versus a weight bearing technique. Footwear dimensions, the width of narrow shoe styles. Foot morphology, the need for no significant forefoot deformities, including HAV or bunions, Taylor's bunions, or metatarsal adductus. And the orthotic surface area. This is reduced with a narrow shell width. Behind the design. Standard shell width. This client needed a custom orthotic to fit a standard footwear style. It was designed to fit the Asics sport shoe and replace the removable insole. The patient's foot was captured semi-weight bearing with only a mild forefoot deformity. The aim of this orthotic was to fit the standard footwear and provide support and control with a custom orthotic. They used the DOLA Custom orthotic service. They selected standard from the shell width options in the digital corrections section of the DOLA detailed prescription form. Key features of this selection include the shell width is measured at a position just proximal to the metatarsal heads. The medial border of the orthotic shell is modified with respect to the first metatarsal. For standard shell width, it spans from the lateral border of the foot to the first metatarsal head bisection. Orthotip. Factors to consider when selecting a standard shell width include the casting or scanning position used, as this will influence the foot morphology captured. Footwear dimensions. This selection is suitable for most standard footwear styles. Foot morphology. This selection is suitable for patients with no or mild forefoot deformity, including HAV or bunions, Taylor's bunions, or metatarsal adductus. And orthotic surface area required. Standard width will provide you with a standard amount of orthotic contact area. Behind the design. Wide shell width. This client needed a custom orthotic to fit a wide work boot and provide maximum contact area. They used a semi-weight bearing scanning technique to capture the expanded foot and provided a template of the work boot insole. The aim of this orthotic was to fit the footwear and provide a large surface area for the application of force via the prescription variables. They used the DOLA Custom orthotic service. They selected the wide shell width from the digital correction section of the DOLA detailed prescription form. Key features of this selection include the measurement of the shell width at a position just proximal to the metatarsal heads. The medial border of the orthotic is modified with respect to the first metatarsal. For wide shell width, it spans from the lateral border of the foot to the medial sesamoid. Orthotip. Factors to consider when selecting a wide orthotic shell width include the casting or scanning position. What foot morphology has your cast or scan captured? Footwear dimensions. This choice can be suitable for standard to wide shoe styles. Foot morphology. This selection is suitable for moderate to significant forefoot deformities, including HAV or bunions, Taylor's bunions, and metatarsus adductus. Orthotic surface area. This selection will increase the contact area of the orthotic to the foot. Other variables. A wide shell width is often combined with other prescription variables, including medial flare, medial flange, polymortens extension, and a wide heel cup. Behind the design, define shell width. Practitioners can request a specific shell width. This could be based on a previous orthotic device or footwear measurements. This information can be provided using the shell width section of the prescription form or indicated on a template. Behind the design, medial taper. This client needed a custom orthotic to fit a sports shoe with a narrow waist. It is designed to fit the ASICS tennis shoe and follow the shoe shape. The aim of this orthotic was to fit the specific footwear to allow for a specific sporting activity. They used the DOLA Custom orthotic service. They selected a taper from the shell width options in the digital corrections section of the DOLA detailed prescription form. A medial taper is a reduction in the width of the waist of the orthotic from the medial side. The standard orthotic waist dimension is determined by a straight line from the heel cup to the anterior shell width. A -5 taper will result in a reduction of the waist of the orthotic by 5% compared to standard. A 10% taper will result in a reduction of the waist of the orthotic by 10% compared to standard. Orthotip. Factors to consider when selecting a medial taper. It is most commonly used to match a footwear shape or dimensions. It is used to accommodate narrow-waisted or hard-to-fit footwear. The prescription will reduce the orthotic surface area. It is not advised for patients with significant midfoot morphology, including a talonavicular bulge. It can also be used for orthotic adjustment or troubleshooting, including to aid in or improve the fit of an EVA orthotic, to reduce the medial arch support or control, or to reduce medial arch irritation. Behind the design, medial flare. This client needed a custom orthotic to follow the significantly medially deviated foot morphology. This included a significant talonavicular bulge and navicular drift. The aim of this orthotic was to follow the foot morphology to allow the application of orthotic reaction force by other prescription variables. They used the DOLA Custom orthotic service. They selected the medial flare from the shell width options in the digital corrections of the DOLA detailed prescription form. Key features of this selection include: a medial flare is an increase in the width of the waist of the orthotic or midsection on the medial side. The standard orthotic waist dimension is determined by a straight line from the heel cup width to the anterior shell width as determined by the prescription and the attributes of the cast or scan. A 5% flare results in an increase in the waist of the orthotic by 5% on the medial side compared to standard. A 10% flare results in an increase in the waist of the orthotic by 10% on the medial side compared to standard. And a 15% flare results in an increase in the waist of the orthotic by 15% on the medial side compared to standard. Users can also define the amount of flare to a set measurement or based on a template. Factors to consider and common uses for selecting a medial flare include: to follow significant medial foot morphology, including a talonavicular bulge or navicular drift, to increase the orthotic surface area, to provide increased medial orthotic reaction force depending on the axis location. Note: appropriate footwear is also very important when prescribing a medial flare. A medial flare can be removed with a grinder. For more information on DOLA Orthotics, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Access our DOLA Custom manual at dolaorthotics.com.